But first, there's only one way to start. And you can talk about a lot of things with the Kansas City Chiefs, who are now Super Bowl champions for the third time in the last 5 years, and they go back-to-back, the first team to do so since the 03 and 04 New England Patriots. You can talk about an Andy Reid, who is one of the most brilliant offensive play designers in the game. He is as good as they come. Probably the best coach in football. I would certainly argue that. You can talk about a Travis Kelce. We'll talk about him and his incident with Reid later in the show. One target for 1 catch and 1 yard early on. Goes crazy in the second half. Leads the team in receiving. Makes every big catch down the stretch those last few drives. You could talk about that Kansas City defense, which every single time down in the red zone on these big third downs, Steve Spagnuolo, great defensive coordinator, right? Having the Chiefs players in position to get ready to go, make these big third down stops. Kansas City defense was great. Couple of takeaways, or the defense got 1 takeaway, special teams got another. You could talk about a lot of factors with the Kansas City Chiefs. Coach, GM putting this roster together, doing so in part due to the Tyreek Hill trade back in 2022. Brett Veach has done a fantastic job with this Chiefs organization. Smart, great offensive coach. All-time great tight end, Travis Kelce, great weapon. But here's the thing, though. A lot of Kansas City's qualities, San Francisco is the same. Brilliant. I'll talk about Kyle Shanahan later. Brilliant, young, offensive play caller. Loaded offense. Kansas City can't say that, but great playmakers with Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, Christian McCaffrey, Kittle, Juwan Jennings. How about Juwan Jennings? Go Vols. A touchdown pass and a touchdown reception. Very excited to see what he did during that game. Great defense, loaded across the board. Great defensive coordinator. Steve Wilks did a great job of this group. Kansas City and San Francisco, very similar in a lot of ways. Except for one. And this is not a shot at Brock Purdy. I swear to you, this is a praise of the man, the myth, the legend himself. His name's Patrick Mahomes. Maybe you've heard of him, and he has simply put, I'm going to go back on a take I said last week. I didn't think I'd put him here, but you know what? Here we are, and I'm going to do it. The second greatest quarterback of all time. He's definitely moved past Manning. I have Manning at third. I have Mahomes at fourth coming in this week. I said he was going to move past Manning with the win. He's got to move past Montana. This can't just be a count the rings type of argument. I've argued that for years with LeBron and Jordan, right? Because what Patrick Mahomes has done is he's made us look at other quarterbacks around the league as lesser than. Josh Allen is a remarkable talent. Can't get through Mahomes. Now, part of the reason people think I'm a Josh Allen hater, I'm like, no, he's just not Mahomes. Mahomes has outplayed him every single time and beaten him every single time in the postseason. Josh Allen's awesome. Not that guy in Kansas City. Lamar Jackson just won his second MVP last week, and deservedly so. Almost won it unanimously. Again, remarkable athlete, can do all these things, and he's not Mahomes. And Joe Burrow, deadly accurate thrower, great in the pocket, can move a little, somewhat physically compromised to a certain degree. Beat Mahomes in the playoffs back in 2022. He's not Patrick either. And then we start to go down the list. I love Trevor coming in this year. Yeah, he ain't Mahomes. I love Dak more than most. He's not Mahomes either. CJ Stroud's coming, not Mahomes. It's very, very similar to Michael Jordan in the 90s. You had all-time greats in the 90s. Not as many as in the 80s, but great players. You had Charles Barkley. You had Patrick Ewing, John Stockton, Karl Malone, Reggie Miller. For some odd reason, some, not myself, look at those guys as, yeah, great, but couldn't win a ring. Yeah, because they ran to number 23 in Chicago. That's why they didn't win a ring. When you run into number 15 in Kansas City, you, in a year where Mahomes' receiving core was the weakest it has been since he's been in Kansas City, in a year where Travis Kelce looks more vulnerable from an on-field production standpoint as he has at any point in his now 11-year career, in a year where Kansas City had to go on the road, all of those components, you still have to play perfect to beat this guy. Brock Purdy, talk about him later in the show, didn't turn the ball over. Brock Purdy was fine yesterday. Didn't make any big mistakes. Yes, they had the special teams gaffe, the fumble by McCaffrey the first drive, but Kansas City didn't take advantage of that takeaway early in the game. You have to play perfectly against this guy. And the only other comparison is Brady. And listen, Mahomes is a ways away from catching Tom. The gap between Tom and everybody else in the GOAT discussion by the time Tom retired, huge. But Mahomes is undoubtedly closing it. And I'll talk about an area where Mahomes has eclipsed Brady undeniably in just a second. But I've read this stat over and over the last few weeks as the Chiefs have stacked up playoff win after playoff win. But we can show it now, and we don't have to show this again until January of 2025. Mahomes' playoff numbers are silly. Okay, but this is Mahomes in the playoffs all time. I'll read the graphic off of the podcast audience. He's 15-3. He's already got the third most wins in playoff history. If he wins, we're going to assume he's in the AFC title game because, he always gets there every single season that he's been the Kansas City Chiefs starter. So if he gets one more win next year, he'll tie Joe Montana for second all time in playoff wins with 16. Now, Brady's got 35. So again, Mahomes has a ways to catch Tom. But Mahomes has won 83% of his playoff games, first all time. Accounts for 314 yards per game, first all time. He has a 41-8 touchdown to interception ratio in the playoffs. That's first all time. A passer rating of 105.8. That's first all time. He completes basically 68% of his passes, also first all time. I've compared his regular season, we don't have the graphic today, but I've compared his regular season numbers to his playoff numbers. With great players, oftentimes we're like, hey, can you maintain your level of greatness once the postseason comes around? Patrick Mahomes, it's like the Simon Cowell. Remember Simon Cowell would say, I don't like it. And there'd be this, oh my gosh. And he'd wait for everything to calm down. I love it. Remember Simon Cowell used to do that? That's what Mahomes does. You ask Mahomes, can you maintain your level of greatness from the regular season to the playoffs? He's like, nope. I'll do you one better. I'll be better in the postseason. With receivers, obviously he's got Travis Kelce. We understand that. But last year, he made Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore integral pieces to the offense to the point where part of the reason I picked the Chiefs to go back-to-back going into this year, and I feel pretty validated with that pick, part of the reason I picked him to go back-to-back is I'm like, hey, Toney, new offense coming from the Giants last year. Sky Moore, second-year player. They'll be comfortable. It's Andy Reid. Kadarius Toney's a healthy scratch. Sky Moore didn't play. This year, Justin Watson, whose career high receiving yards was this year, 490. With MVS Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who did catch a touchdown this game, had a big catch a couple weeks ago against Baltimore to seal the deal. He was so valuable to the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers, they let him walk. Rashee Rice is a nice young rookie. I like him, but, we still got some developing to do. With either kids or rejects, Mahomes says, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I'll take you not only to the promised land, I'll get you that Lombardi trophy. And one area, again, GOAT discussion, that's the Mahomes versus Brady thing. We got a ways before we can actually have a legitimate conversation between those two. Who's the greatest ever? Mahomes has officially surpassed Brady in one regard, though. Undeniably. And I've sort of alluded to this for the last couple of seasons. We can pretty much put it to bed now. Mahomes is the greatest comeback artist we've ever seen at the quarterback position, including Brady. We can show you some of the numbers, okay? Because some of these are mind-blowing. Do we have the first stat up here? Here we go. So here's the first one. Mahomes trailing by 10 or more in the regular season and the playoffs, okay? So basically every game that means anything, regular season playoffs, Mahomes is 17-14 when trailing by 10 or more in the regular season and the postseason. So that's about 54.8% of his games he wins down by double digits. Every other quarterback in the history of the game does not win half their games, win down by double digits or more in the regular season and the playoffs. That's crazy. We could show Mahomes to Tom Brady. When trailing by 7 or more in the playoffs, Mahomes is 9-2. When trailing by 7 or more in the playoffs, he's 9-2. Folks, he wins 82% of his games. He's like a home run bet to take when he's down by 7 or more. Brady's 10-11, which is highly impressive. Brady won almost half his games trailing by 7 or more in the playoffs. Everybody else wins about 23% of the games. Every other quarterback in the history of the league who's trailed by 7 or more in the playoffs wins 23% of their games. Tom wins about 47%, not even half, but darn close. Mahomes was 81, almost 82% of his games when down by 7. Nuts. Another Mahomes stat. Mahomes, when trailing by 10 or more in the playoffs, so double digits, he's 5-2. He wins 71% of his games down double digits or more. Every other quarterback that's ever played the game, 8-55, wins 13% of their games. And the final stat, Tom versus Mahomes in the Super Bowl, when trailing by 10 or more. Brady's 2-1, which is incredible. Mahomes is 3-1, even better. Everybody else, 2-47. The only two quarterbacks to get wins outside of Tom and Mahomes when down double digits in a Super Bowl is Doug Williams with Washington in the 80s, I believe, and Drew Brees with the New Orleans Saints about 15 years ago. Mahomes is the greatest comeback artist in the history of the game. And doing so, again, with, yes, Kelsey, and they got Kelsey more involved in the second half. More on Kelsey later. But straight up, and I don't want to be disrespectful here because the Chiefs just won the Super Bowl. What did Bill Parcells, the great coach, wants to talk about just sort of guys in the NFL? He called them Jags, just a guy. Bunch of Jags out there. Not bums, but guys. MVS, he's a guy. Rice is ascending. He's getting better. He's with Mahomes and Reed. You have to assume he'll get better, but still not there yet. The same could definitely be said about Justin Watson. He's fine. He's a guy. We keep waiting on another quarterback to challenge Mahomes, and Burrow came darn close. He actually did beat him in 2021 during the AFC Championship game. That's why I got Burrow number 2. But whenever we do, we do these rankings and we do like tiers, like tier 1 has this many people, tier 2, right? Whenever we do tiers from here on out in regards to quarterbacks, tier 1's Mahomes, tier 2 is vacant, then you can go to tier 3. Because the gap between, I got Burrow second. I think Burrow's absolutely the second best quarterback in the league. The gap between 1 and 2 is 5 Grand Canyons. Burrow is awesome. What this guy just did is win the hardest championship in the history of the league. In terms of the opponents, right? The Miami Dolphins, everybody sort of crapped on Miami. Let's remember the fact that they were tied for the second best record in the conference with 11 wins. And Kansas City mopped the floor with them, which Miami's not very good in cold weather. Okay. How about the Buffalo Bills? Everybody was high on Buffalo, so much so they were favored in the game against Kansas City in Buffalo. Kansas City went to Buffalo, outplayed them, beat them. Baltimore, best team in the league for most of the season. I had them at number 1 for big chunks of the year. Best overall team, arguably the best roster, the MVP, Lamar Jackson, and the Chiefs controlled that game throughout, despite being underdogs, 4.5-point underdogs, which was nutso, and won that game. So knocked off the best team, arguably, in football, and then knocked off the best roster in football, despite being outplayed for the vast majority of the game because they have that guy at quarterback. Because they have that guy at the quarterback position. If there's one thing that we have learned, whether or not the Chiefs will win 3 straight next year, which has never been done in the Super Bowl era, that remains to be seen. What we do know, Patrick Mahomes should never be an underdog the rest of his career until proven otherwise. Because what he just did is unlike anything we've ever seen. Shout out to the Kansas City Chiefs. And for those that missed the game, I hate to hear that. Here's the game when he forgot to bring up Mecole Hardman. Guy was a jet to start the season. Justin Watson, 490 yards, his career high in receiving yards. MVS was so valuable to Green Bay, they let him walk. What that guy just did, with, by the way, a below-average offensive line, I might add. That O-line got worked yesterday by Bosa, by Armstead, by Chase Young. Worked. And he still pulled it off. Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs, Super Bowl champions again, and a very worthy champion, and undoubtedly a dynasty. The fact of the matter is, Kansas City, San Francisco share a lot of similar traits. That guy changes everything. That's not a disrespect to Purdy. That's a call out to the rest of the league. It's a call because everybody is looking for their guy to reach that level, and he simply can't because nobody playing in the league currently can. And nobody all time can, except for that guy who played in New England and in Tampa. Unbelievable game. And just that's one of those moments in sports that simply leaves you speechless. Shout out to Mahomes and shout outs to the Super Bowl champion once again, Kansas City Chiefs. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.